Okay, so if you've been training or working out at a gym for a while, you probably would have heard someone talk about the neuromuscular system or neuromuscular adaptation. So in this video, I just want to give an overview of what this means. It can be quite confusing for some people, but hopefully this will make it a lot more clearer and assist you going forward. So when we're looking at the neuromuscular system, our key focus really is the central nervous system. Now the central nervous system breaks off into two separate branches, your autonomic nervous system and your somatic nervous system. Now the autonomic nervous system splits down the line in two separate parts, and you've got your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Now your sympathetic is your fight or flight kind of mode, and your parasympathetic is your rest and relax. Now we're not going to touch too much on that, we may cover it in another video. What we want to focus on is the somatic nervous system. So when we're looking at this, it breaks down into three sections really, and that is sensation, integration and response. So this forms our ACE concept, ACE. And our ACE concept breaks down as the following. You've got afferent, then central nervous system, then efferent. So your afferent part of the ACE concept is the sensory neuron. So as I said, sensation, integration, response. Afferent is the sensory neuron. So it's the body recognizing what it needs to do, what range of motion it needs to go in, how much force needs to be exerted, things like that. It sends that feedback to the central nervous system, which is our C, central nervous system. So this consists of our spinal cord and our brain, as well as all the branches off of our spinal cord. And then the central nervous system emits an efferent neuron. And the efferent, which is our E under the ACE concept, our efferent neuron is a motor neuron. So again, it goes from an afferent sensory neuron to the central nervous system. Then from the central nervous system, there is an efferent motor neuron, which then attaches to the motor units, and the motor units attach then to muscle fibers. So that's where we go from the central nervous system over to the muscular part of neuromuscular system and training. So that last bit there is the key focus really. The efferent neuron, so the motor neuron response is emitted from the central nervous system, that then sends off a motor neuron, and the motor neuron then attaches to the motor units, and motor units are attached to muscle fibers. So for instance, your quadriceps muscle or muscles are a lot larger than say the muscles in your fingers. So with your quadriceps, you'll have few motor units, only a few, but lots of muscle fibers there. So one motor unit could be attached to lots of muscle fibers. Whereas with your fingers, there is a lot of motor units, but few muscle fibers on each motor unit, which allows for more intricate movement. So that's how that differs. So yeah, basically, as I said, the motor unit is attached to the muscle fibers, and that emits a reaction in the musculature. So, if we're looking at sort of how to train the neuromuscular system, it's important to note that it will always be trained through everyday movement. Even when you're at rest, your central nervous system is always picking up on what you're giving it. So if you was to train for muscular hypertrophy, now this can have a slightly taxing effect on the central nervous system, but it is not targeted at training the nervous system. This is targeted at training muscular hypertrophy. So if we wanted to actually train the nervous system, although it does as I said, pick up on everything that happens continuously throughout the day. If you actually want to train, say, neural speed or neural strength, then there are particular modalities to follow in doing this, such as picking up an extremely heavy load close to your sort of 1 repetition max. But you will always be using your central nervous system in everyday movement. It doesn't switch off, it's always operating. So one other little thing I wanted to note is that when you're first starting out to train and exercise, the initial progression is largely central nervous system and neuromuscular adaptation. Most people think, I started at, say, this weight, and now I'm lifting this weight, and it's a huge progression in only just a small matter of time, and they say, oh, it's the muscle. Well, actually, it's more likely to be the nervous system creating an adaptation, which has now allowed for that progression. But the main thing to take from this video, to summarise, is that when you're looking at the neuromuscular system and training the neuromuscular system, it's largely dependent on the central nervous system. It's dependent on the ACE concept, the afferent neuron, which is giving feedback to the central nervous system, and the central nervous system releasing back out a efferent neuron, which is your motor unit recruitment. So when that efferent neuron, the motor neuron, is released from the central nervous system to the local muscles, that is going to recruit the motor units, and that then therefore recruits muscle fibres. So they're completely interlinked, the central nervous system and the muscles as well. Okay, I think that's all I've got on here. So hopefully that has sort of summarised and cleared up a little bit to do with the neuromuscular system, adaptation and training. If there's anything more you want to know, or any other subjects that you might want a video on, or just some advice, do leave me a like, a message, anything like that, and just let me know. Any feedback is beneficial for me. So hope you enjoyed it, and until the next one.